Welcome back to JKMoto Podcast, a weekly motorcycle podcast for the everyday rider, covering current bike and racing news, specializing in track days, club racing, and great entertainment. We truly do it all. And this week we are brought to you by Working Class Customs, which is a custom fabrication shop out of northern Utah. You can direct any further questions on that to Cole.
And I'm Cole.
I'm Easton. We're your two favorite hosts of your favorite weekly motorcycle podcast.
Right. So, let's see. No weather, no motorcycles, no. Okay. Make sure I don't talk about any of the things on my cue card here that says I can't talk about them.
Yeah.
I sent a post from you today.
I did make a post today. Maybe. I think it was yesterday, but yeah, I made a post.
Okay.
I do that from time to time.
Okay, well, we don't discriminate or nothing, but there seems to be a flavor problem on the rubber wrapped around those wheels.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on there?
Well, I decided to do some testing, and I was curious about something. I came across an interesting set of tires, and I said, you know what? For the price and what they tend to offer, let's give them a try and see what we think.
Oh, my Lord, you put Shinkos on that thing.
Oh, yeah.
Are they drag slicks?
They are drag slicks, yeah. So I figured that RSV4 has most of its power, it's straight line power. So,
okay.
Talking to some professional racers and whatnot, they said 1,000s, liter bikes, you point shoot, right? Who cares about corner speed? Because you come in, straight line, you turn the bike as fast as you can, and then you pull out straight line and get on it. So I said, well, if I'm just always straight line or turning real quick, I might as well put drag slicks on there. So,
my hell, I hope the listeners know we're joking.
Yeah, more to come on that, I think, after the break. But I say we roll the intro and let's get into this week's episode talking about, what was the title you mentioned yesterday, Cole?
Let's just say motorcycles for now and roll the intro.
Okay. All right.
Yesterday, at one point, I was in sixth. Miles an hour.
And we're back.
We're back. The answer to the question, if you had the question, is those are not Shinkos. They are not drag slicks at all. They are, in fact, the Metzler Track Day slick. So Metzler has a long history running over Isle of Man, and they put together all of their data and everything else and compiled a slick tire for track day riders or club racers at a lower level that want a more even grip across a wider temperature range and across the life of the tire. And supposedly they also don't need tire warmers. So essentially, they've been working over there for years. Obviously, Isle of Man, if you guys don't know, Irish road racing is performed outside on country farm roads, as we would know it over here. And so their tires have to be able to work in all those different conditions. So they kind of compiled all that data from over the years and came up with a compound that doesn't need tire warmers and offers a very linear style of grip, I guess.
Let's argue about your grammar for once.
Okay.
It's not Irish road racing.
That is what it's called.
No, it's called the Isle of Man.
The Isle of Man is one race at the end of the season, but there's an entire season of Irish road racing over there that happens on many different roads, not just the Isle of Man. That's a thing. It's insane. Those guys are nuts. Every weekend, some random farm road in Ireland closes down for a motorcycle race. There could be trees on the road, cows, freaking rain, mud, cow manure. I don't know. These guys are crazy.
You don't want your slicks to cool down if you have to stop for a herd of sheep?
Correct. Well, and if they do cool down, you want them to warm back up real quick. So, yeah, no, I threw them on there. I'm going to go do some coaching and training down in Texas later on this year. And so I figured it'd be a good shot to try out something a little different I've never tried out before and see how I like it. Be able to give you guys, our listeners mostly, the feedback. Figure out if that might be a good tire for you, or stay far away from it, or offer it to a buddy as a solution. So they preach it as if you're not sure about slicks, you want to try them out. You get all the benefits without all the negatives, if you will. So,
well, I mean, I hope they work out for you, because you said that they're supposed to go over a wide range of temperatures and throughout the entire range of the tire.
Yeah. That's the only weird part to me is they say that there's no drop off in grip all the way to the end of the tire, which to me just means you better be freaking watching that thing for when you think it's done, because otherwise you'll be out there and it will go from like, yep, you had grip, now you have zero. It's gone. Tire's done. But
all right, well, I expect a full report.
I will give one. Yep, as soon as we get them tested, that is the plan. So
I knew they weren't that other brand. You can see that other brand. You can see the casting marks in them.
Yeah, they also, this one has some weird kind of rings, like all the way around the outside. I'd say every 8 inches or so.
Yep.
So yeah, I was hesitant to post them because of all of the people in my life. But
well, I got to you first.
We ventured away from that other brand already, so I figured we might as well just head all the way down the line, test everything, and see what they have to offer.
I'm gonna stick with what I'm doing.
There you go. Well, hey, before we get into the theme of this episode and actually dive deep into it, how do you feel about a rider tip? I got a special one for you this week.
Oh, great. I'm always good for them.
All right. Well, that's what's up. This week's rider tip, tailored specifically for Cole, at least the beginning, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words of it, is brought to you by Binder Motorsports, which is private coaching that builds solid riders through vision-based training. Are we ready?
Not anymore. Now I'm nervous.
Well, anyway, Josh Bidinger has to say this week, horse hockey, baloney, and bull balarkey. You don't know where the limit is until you find it. He says this common phrase is kicked around the paddock and makes riders think that crashing is the only way to learn how to go fast. You can learn to go fast without crashing as much as people think that it's part of your progression. Add a little speed until you blow a corner, then fix it. Then repeat. By making small changes, you can learn progressively without crashes, repair costs, and recovery time. If you want to learn where the limit is and how to operate your motorcycle near or even past the limit, learn it through cross-training on flat track bikes, mini motos, or through schools such as Corner Spin, American Super Camp, or training with friends. Crashing shouldn't be part of your progression plan. Yes, it can happen. Yes, it probably will happen. But with proper training, it will certainly happen less, with likely less injury and or bike damage.
You better read my first 5 words again.
Okay, yeah. Horse hockey, baloney, and bull balarkey. Horses and bulls, the animals are back.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Hey, you say that was geared to me, but I think that was geared to your favorite Marc Marquez. Sorry, not going to go down that chain again. But no, you don't have to go down that chain.
No, it's fine. There's 2 stories to go. Right before I received this tip, we get these tips a couple days in advance. And right before I received it, I read an article that said, if you're at the top, that means you're probably crashing the most. The fastest riders in the world always crash the most. That's how they learn. That's how they find the limit, blah, blah. And it was literally an article saying the exact opposite of Josh's weekly tip. And I got his tip, and I was kind of just laughing about it. But then also, a certain smaller person that I hang out with a lot was out riding a very small bicycle and crashed said bicycle. And some words were thrown out there that if you're not crashing, you're not learning. And then I read that weekly tip out loud, and everyone kind of started laughing because, once again, kind of the opposite. But I like it. It brings a different sense. There is definitely that phrase where you got to crash to find the limit. You got to crash to learn. And, he mentions at the end crashing will happen, but I do think there is that. We talked years ago about that kind of slow approach to the edge. And I think you and I would both be in agreement that a racing season is much cheaper if you can keep the bike up the whole season.
Absolutely.
So I like those words from Josh. And I'd say even if you're not worried about crashing, cross-training still applies. Always good to get, some time on the dirt or some time at a school, maybe
Well,
some time with a coach, see a different perspective.
well, thank you for the tip, Josh. I agree with it. Sorry, I took it back to Mark Marquez there. Do appreciate the tip. Just to head down a rabbit hole from that tip, though.
Mm-hmm.
That's the number one problem with this sport is people going out and crashing their brains out and then not being able to either financially or medically or all those things continue, and they either lose interest or give up on it because they put it down so many times. So flip side of that is keeping it upright, progressing maybe slower,
Mm-hmm.
keep more people in the sport as well, especially the ones with real potential to be fast.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I don't know if this rings true, and if we have any sponsored riders out in the audience, specifically like if you wreck your bike, in a practice, you've got a new bike waiting for you. I've always wondered, what that feels like. I've ridden other people's bikes, and that feels worse than riding your own because you're worried about putting it down. Um, but riding someone else's bike that is given to you to go race to the limit, is it easier to put it down, get up, walk away, and call it good? It's kind of, you mentioned the difference between a privateer and a sponsored rider way back in the days. Privateer's out picking up as many pieces of the windshield as he can because can't afford another one. It's kind of along those lines. I've always wondered. If you got a sponsorship and the teams they're building your bikes, then all about it. I don't have anything against it. I just wonder how much that changes the mental game when you're out there riding.
I'm sure that scenario is different for every situation because at the top level, even at the top level, I don't think they appreciate you crashing your bike every time you touch it, no matter what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And at the smaller levels, they can't afford to have you crash the bike every time. So I'm sure there's pressure there when you put somebody else's bike down, even if you got one sitting back in the pits from a financial standpoint. But I would also add that based off of not Josh's tip, but the article that you read,
Mm-hmm.
Joanne Mir is the fastest dude in the world.
Yeah, that, or maybe just the limit is way closer than anyone ever thought. Yeah, it is. It is interesting because you could throw someone that's never ridden before out on a racetrack, never ridden a motorcycle, and they're going to wreck it 10 times, and they're probably not the fastest person out there. So, yep, that was an interesting article, and it was definitely geared towards said person that wears underwear that is gold, and such is life. But anyway, that, that I
Golden
think that'll finish out that tip. I do like that tip a lot. You can absolutely run a race season and keep in the back of your head that you don't want to put a bike down, or you can do testing, you can do track days, you can do training, you can do a lot of things that should keep you upright more often. And if you're trying to run your own season, there's the issue with club racing is it's a hobby, and so all the money's coming from your own pocketbook. And you can get some sponsors, you can get some help, you can get this and that, but at the end of the day, you're paying for it. So we as the collective that loves this sport need you to be able to financially stay in the game. So heed Josh's tip and carry on.
We're leaving one thing out though.
What is that?
In a perfect world where everything's your fault or not your fault, there's a certain percentage of those things that happen that no matter how careful you're being, somebody else might not be.
Yeah.
So you might be shown the edge.
Yeah, different type of edge, I think. But yeah, that does happen. It can happen. It has happened. Not to me personally, but I think you've had a little bit of experience with that. Not just in racing either, but Las Vegas was never good to you. So
I've been shown the door a couple times.
All right. Well, anyway, that's going to wrap up the tip. Thanks again, Josh, for bringing us that tip this week and every week. We love it. If you're looking to ride with Josh, check out BittingerMotorsports.com. There will be a link down in the description. You can also go follow him on Facebook, Instagram, and watch for when he's got dates available. He has made some pretty big upgrades, and he's got some really good stuff for the sport and the upbringing of the sport coming our way soon that I know he's working on. And I don't want to steal his thunder there, so I won't announce it, but doing some awesome stuff down there at MSRH. So anyway, moving into tonight's episode theme, I can say that I am currently been working on building a race bike, getting some finishing touches put up, and on top of that, going through a ton of stuff in my mind as to what it's going to take to do a race season for me next year. I know you are about to finish up your second season at USBA, this one being your first full, correct?
Yep.
So you're doing all, what have they got, 5 rounds out there?
5 rounds, yep.
You're doing all 5 rounds this year. Last year you didn't quite do that, but we wanted to run you guys as an audience through kind of, I want to start at the very beginning. Not the very beginning. We'll say you've already done some track days or you've at least been out to some club races. You own a motorcycle. You get the gear. Cool. Just a quick kind of rundown through the steps of, okay, it's late 2024, getting near the end. We're past the halfway mark. I want to race next year. What that takes, what things you got to do for yourself, for your bike, together with you and the bike, and kind of the timeline along with those things. So
what are we going to take this from? Somebody wanting to race their first year?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Let's say that kind of similar to my story, minus the part of how I got my race license. Let's say you're coming out of this season and you've done some track days, you've got them under your belt, you think you're ready to go, and you want to race next year. What's the first thing you do, Cole, if you want to race next year?
We're going to get a race license, or we're going to have a race license on our radar.
Okay.
We're going to know that we're going to need one of those in order to race. Most clubs around the nation are going to have their NRC or their NRS or whatever your particular club calls it. They're going to have those scheduled early in the spring. That's going to be, maybe associated with a track day or scheduled close by, but they're going to be before the racing season starts. Most places, Correct. If you miss that, you're going to be waiting till mid-year for your next one to come around, probably.
Yeah, so I have another research on this, and I apologize for it, but is it possible that, and if not, why are they not? It's my bigger question, but are clubs doing it at the end of the season? Paired up with the last round, could you go and do an NRC? Anyway, just food for thought for those running clubs out there that might listen to this podcast. Maybe offer an NRC at the end of your season if you got someone that's been doing track days and, it takes them till the end of the season. Get them the NRC. Get them hooked before the winter starts so they already have that check mark lined off. But, yeah, Cole's absolutely right. You have to have a license to race. There are a lot of things we're going to talk about tonight that are a little bit more than doing track days. I'd say doing a track day is a little bit more than just having a motorcycle and ride it on the weekend. I'd say club racing is kind of the next level, and it does require an extra license, that race license. So you do need to find a place to do that, the NRC, the NRS, race license certification, whatever it might be. But I would say, I think right before you go searching for that, you got to figure out what club you're going to race with. And I think that's, for you in Utah, Cole, it's a pretty easy one. Like, okay, well, there's only one. Cool. So if you're in an area like that, that's what you got. But if you're in an area like I am, I've got 3 to 4 different options of clubs that I could race with. And to be honest with you, I'm still kind of throwing around different ideas, but I think that would be number one. And my suggestion for anyone that's looking at these different clubs is go through the rule book a little bit, talk to some friends that have raced with one or the other, and then also look at the location of the tracks that they race at. If you're looking at competitive numbers, depending, you shouldn't really worry about that too much. Just get out there and be as competitive as you can be and try and win. But look at what tracks they are. I will say that traveling adds a whole separate cost to it. So if you're trying to do a whole season specifically or especially, definitely look at what all tracks these different clubs offer, and I would make your decision based off of that, I think, more than anything else. Just location to you. of the racetracks that they will race at. But once you figure that out, which club you want to be at, your race license, that is step one. But you mentioned that's early spring. Right now it's August. So what can I do? We'll talk bike side, then we'll talk personal side. Leading up to that, what type of stuff do I have to nail down?
We're starting with bikes?
I think so. I mean, everyone's got a bike. They've got a track bike. It's got some fairings on it. May or may not already be running slicks.
So we're going to the big time. We're getting rid of the track day. We're not taping stuff up anymore. We're getting serious about this. I would buy some cheap fairings.
There you go.
I would buy, we've talked about it before. You know, most people listening are going to know, but to go from a track day to a race day, we're going to need to safety wire a bike. We are going to need to get rid of the lights, the glass, no more tape, and we're going to need a belly pan. So
there you go. That's the key, is that belly pan, because I think, I've read a couple of rule books in the past few days, and actually tape over lights is still 100% allowed. But the belly pan is kind of where it comes in. If you're going to get a belly pan, you might as well get all your race fairings. I think there's a misconception that, I think there's two that make me laugh. A lot of people will say that fiberglass is easily repairable. So race fairings are great because you can just repair the fiberglass. And you walk all over the paddock and you see duct tape everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then at the beginning of the next year, everyone's got new ones. No one repairs them. But they are easily repairable if you want to go down that route. You can also just throw duct tape on them. Anyway, the other thing is that you'll save your street fairings and put them back on later and sell it for more money as a street bike. Which I can't tell you that you won't do that.
You're calling that a misconception?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. I don't know. It's interesting. Maybe we'll get some details from Cole on that later on in life.
Yeah, I was going to say, chances are you're going to take your old clapped out whatever, put race fairings on it, and you're going to beat it the rest of the way into the ground, and there's not going to be any bike to put fairings back on it. That's the sad truth of it.
Yep. As things break, you'll get more and more... further and further away from a street bike, and you got to put the street fairings back on and realize that you don't even have the right holes to put the bolts in.
Yeah, and we're missing the other thing that we didn't mean to talk about, but it seems more common. I know it's done it to me, so not to go down a rabbit hole, but I told you I'm leaving on a bike tomorrow morning. Mm-hmm. I'm going 585 miles one way. And I'm, doing the thing. But that being said, how often do I do that anymore?
Probably not near as much as before.
You start riding on the track, you're not going to want your street fairings on anymore anyway, because the road's dangerous.
Yep.
We talk
about, and for those of you that are cool in the audience, you could look into a Harley Davidson for those weekends when you find yourself needing a good old road cruise. But yeah, before we dive too deep into that rabbit hole. Anyway, so race fairings are a great option, 100%. Throw them on there. Be honest with yourself though, and I wouldn't build a race bike on the premise of I'm going to turn this back into a street bike. I would build a race bike to go race the race bike, personally. If you're going to make the decision, make the decision. If you don't want to make that decision, scrap the idea. Go buy one pre-done. Go buy someone else's, because those are abundant. They're cheap, generally, and they've already got all the little things that you don't necessarily think about. So I can tell you from personal experience of going through a lot, in my head, I'm like, I want all of these things. And so I start adding up the cost of all these things that I want. And then I look at the rule book, and I look at what I actually need, and I'm like, I don't need half of that, but I do actually have to find these other couple things that I do need to race this bike. So the belly pan, absolutely in there. The safety wire that Cole mentioned and kind of glossed over, and I don't mean that you meant to gloss over that, but safety wire is more than just like, got to have some safety wire. You got to learn how to safety wire. Then you got to figure out what all needs to be safety wired. And then you either got to drill it or go buy all those bolts pre-drilled. So when you're doing that, I will say that different clubs require different things. Most of them are going to have the general start. These are the things that are required for every club. It's a pretty unified list. And a couple clubs have a couple of extra things that they want safety wired on there. So make sure you're looking at your rule book, going through there, double, triple checking. But do you have to have a full race bike before you do your NRC?
No, sir.
And why is that?
Because they understand that people that are taking the NRC aren't necessarily fully committed at that point. And so most NRC classes that I've seen, or NRS or whatever you want to call it, most of those classes are still track day rules as far as bike prep.
Mm-hmm.
I can speak from experience just in Utah. They will tech the bike like they were going to race it, and you will fail 15 things, and they will just tell you what you failed that needs to be fixed for that first race weekend.
Right. Yeah, so I think that's pretty sweet. That's a good way to do it. You can definitely go in there with the best you can. Be as close as you think you can be, or as close as you can be. And then get that list from them of, okay, yeah, hey, you did a good job, but you're missing these 10 different things, or you didn't put safety wire on your rear axle nut, or, whatever, couple little things you missed. But also, you got to realize that the NRC is not a sanctioned race, and so they're not required by insurance and whatever other rules to have all those things on there. So that's what's kind of nice about it, is if you're on the fence, and also I think that's why, once again, presidents and whatever runners of clubs, if you're listening, that's why I think an NRC would be great to offer at the end of the season for next season. But anyway, you can take your track bike, you can take your street bike technically and go, but realize that if you're going to race next year, there are a list of things that you have to go through. So, belly pan, safety wire, tires. We're not just going to talk about tires. I would relate you back to an episode we had with Chris Hamlet, not John Hutchinson. Chris Hamlet on tires, slicks versus road, all those different options. And, we're going to find out here in a couple of months if a track day slick is good enough to race with, and maybe we'll carry that out through next season to keep the testing going. There are also people that will race on, a DOT race tire.
Absolutely.
And there's actually quite a few people that I think would argue that most club racers don't need anything more than that. And you can get just as fast. You can get just as good at lap times. But there is also my argument for anyone to anyone that's arguing against going to slicks is the mental game that comes in behind it, of just how much stickier do you feel like you are on a set of slicks, which a lot of times if you're riding below the limit of the motorcycle, the mental game for you is kind of the biggest, I would say.
I'll allow it.
Okay.
And then guess what else you got to do?
What is that?
You got to stop drinking. You got to work out 7 hours a day. You need to no more pizza in your life.
Well, we're going to get to the U part. We got to wrap up the bike part.
I thought we did wrap up the bike part.
You forgot one very important part. Actually, quite a few, but one. Very important.
Change of oil?
Nah. You get
What I missed?
That's been big on my mind lately. I got some words for some people on that, but we're running a lot of data behind the scenes on oil changes, and I'll get back to you guys on that. But a brake lever guard, man, a freaking brake lever guard. The illustrious brake lever guard that you will often see on people's street bikes with a clutch lever guard and absolutely zero other protection for the bike. If you're going to race your bike, you are required for almost every club in America, it is sanctioned by the AMA, to have case covers on both sides of your engine.
Mm-hmm.
And a brake lever guard. What is that brake lever guard for, Cole?
It's so that, the popular thing with the kids to do is to pull up at the stoplight and reach over and turn your key off. Mm-hmm. Hit your stop button. Mm-hmm. Well, it was popular for a time for somebody to reach over and hit your brake for you.
On the straight?
On the straight. Absolutely happened. Put some people in the hospital. But it's to keep that from happening, whether it's intentional or just when you're in traffic and you're, bumping bars, riding close.
I'd say more so the latter than the other one. But yeah. Yeah, contrary to maybe popular belief, if you're on this show listening, you probably already know, but a lot of people think that the brake lever guard is there to guard your brake lever if you crash the motorcycle and prevents you from having to buy a brake lever, which costs about the same. So that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, but there you go. Nope, it's there to prevent your brake from being accidentally actuated when you rub up against another bike, or Mark Marquez's knee finds itself on top of your brake lever. I don't know, whatever it might be. So,
or his elbow.
Anyway, I think that wraps up the bike. You got safety wire. You got to have a belly pan. You got to have this brake lever guard, and then you got to have the engine covers on both sides. Obviously, frame sliders and other protection, axle, rear spools, whatever. Very. I was about to say important, but not.
Okay, well, I didn't realize we were trying to go for the all-inclusive list here. So,
yeah.
So you're going to read a rule book, you're going to go through a list, and you're going to figure out what's right for your bike.
Oh boy, Cole's become one of the read the book type of people.
No, I'm not going to read the book. I'm saying you should.
You will get told that a lot. Anytime you ask someone a question, they're like, read the book, and then you read the book, and it doesn't make any sense because it's 10 years outdated and they haven't updated it. But read the book, and then go argue the book. Throw the book back in their face. All right, so that's a bike. You got a bike ready to go. You found your NRC. You decided what club you're going to race with. Now it's winter. It's the holiday time. You're eating turkey and mashed taters and drinking a lot of eggnog and whatever else might have you.
Now are we talking about the body?
Yep, the body and the mind and the spirit.
Just like everything in life, it all depends on how serious you want to take it. But you can say it, I can say it, we can all say it. It takes some strength and conditioning to ride a bike well on a race weekend, to make it through multiple races and not, gas out.
Yeah, especially if you're trying to pull a Cole and do a back-to-back-to-back.
Right.
It is kind of crazy. Take Utah. You run 7-lap races out there. I know you have the one. What is it? The combined that's up to 11.
Yep.
And then the Kingdom Mountains 14, right?
Yep.
But a 7-lap race with a sub 2-minute lap time means you're out there less than 14 minutes.
You got to do the siding lap, the cool down.
Yeah, whatever. Cool.
I'm just saying, these things, the 15 minutes of death metal in your ears before the race. I mean, it all adds up.
Yeah, it just sending this towards people that haven't raced before, and I haven't even really done a full race weekend, let alone a season. But if you've been doing track days for a long time, or even only for a little time, and you're always skipping that last session because you're like, I'm just too tired. I'm not gonna head out there. It's not worth it. Whatever. If it's at all because you're too tired,
you're not ready.
Yeah, a race weekend. Like I said, I don't have any real experience, and I can tell you that. I can't imagine doing I'd say it's a different level of riding. You're, on a track day, you can relax. You can take a session or a lap. It doesn't matter. Even if you're out there testing and trying to prove some lap times, you can still take a couple laps and relax, or take a whole session and relax and refine some things or whatever you need to do. But if you're racing and qualifying, you are riding at your limit the whole time, or you should be at least.
And it's physical and it's mental. And if you go do a track day and then the next day, or you go to work on Monday and you're like, it takes you 3 days to recover from that.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a weekend when you do. I mean, generally you're going to do the track day leading up to the race weekend. You got to back.
Yep. If you're doing 2-day racing, it'd be 3 good days, and the track day might be the easiest day of them all. So, yeah. Don't take the winter off and think I'll get to it later. I'll figure it out. I'll be all right. Even if you're younger or if you're older or whatever, wherever you're at in life. Also realize that it's different. I'd say if you're a fit person that runs a lot, bikes a lot, whatever, you get the good endurance, then you'll probably be all right. But just, it's a full day of exercise, both, like you said, physical and mental, and you got to be ready for that. So think about that sooner than later. start now, build the habits now, and maybe you'll be ready. Also, if you lose weight, your bike's faster. So just putting that out there.
Right.
Or you can just put all titanium and carbon fiber on the bike and make it for it that way, I guess. I don't know.
No, don't do that. It's way cheaper to just lose some weight.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I did want to talk about the mental game a little bit more later on. But
I think we should go back and touch on. We want you to go out and race, and we want you to have a successful year.
mm-hmm.
And it's good to decide on a budget, set a budget.
That's what I was going to get into.
You're absolutely going to learn. You're absolutely going to learn things on the way. You can do as much planning as you want, and then when you get into it, you'll realize, I didn't think of this or I didn't think of that. So do the best that you can with a budget, and then try to plan that for whether you want to do a 5-race season or a 20-race season, whatever that is, and then try to stick to that and go into it knowing. Because always quite surprised how many people, what do you call that? Cash out? How many people finance out?
I don't have a word for it, but I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that when you're going over your budget this winter, you're building your race bike. You're like, all right, sweet. I want these new $2,500 wheels. I want these new this. I want this and this and this, and all this is going to help the bike out. You could do that. If you got the means to do it, absolutely do it. But I would almost argue that besides just budgeting, part of that budgeting being, okay, instead of buying all this stuff that I want right now, let's put all this money aside for, who knows how many tires you're actually going to go through. I don't know if that's changed for you a whole lot or if it was just a big surprise the first weekend, how many tires you went through, or if you were planning on it and you were good to go. I don't know.
No,
just tires.
I had a plan going in. I definitely just needed to double that as far as tires go.
There you go. Okay.
But that was a progression. I think I've got it nailed down pretty good now to where I know what it's going to take to get through a weekend. But again, I always talk about it, but financially, I don't have to buy necessarily as many tires as I'm buying.
Right.
It all depends on what level you're wanting to go to and what's making you comfortable on the track. So, and it depends on what bike you're driving. I mean, everybody's situation is going to be different.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The old Beamer's going to eat a lot more tires than the KTM 390. So,
true that. True that. Yeah. If you're looking for cheap, 390 I've heard is 6 rounds on one tire. So if you're looking for cheap, that might be the way to do it.
So you mentioned his name earlier, but John, was it John on here that said race the bike you can afford to race also?
Yeah.
That
was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if you show up with this blinged out Ducati, whatever, the brand new V4S, full swing arm Ducati that the dealers don't have parts for yet, and heaven forbid you put that thing down on day one.
Yep.
And you find out that a new clip-on for the thing doesn't exist yet, or
is 3 weeks out from Italy and costs $1,100 per side.
Yeah, and that's fine. You got that Ducati money, but if you don't, maybe you should think about racing that KTM 390.
There you go. Yeah, that kind of, that almost goes back to the beginning when I mentioned if the holdout is, I'm going to turn this back into a street bike later, might be worth just buying someone else's race bike. Also, generally, those people have a lot of spares lying around and everything else. Definitely worth looking into. Also, I think that kind of goes right in line with if you're looking at all these different parts that aren't in the rule book as necessary, save that money and get through your first round. Figure out everything you were missing. Figure out everything else you want. Figure out how much your tire budget actually looks like. How much water you go through in a weekend. Whatever else it might be. I guarantee from experience of even just doing track days, there's always some sort of expense that you're forgetting about when you're planning things out. So it's nice to kind of have that buffer.
Like a new gas cap. Sorry.
Yeah, like a new gas cap. Yeah, but always bring an extra gas cap for your bike. Always bring an extra gas. Gosh dang it, why'd you got to bring that up? And the other thing that I mentioned, we forgot on the bike. Sorry, this is kind of random and just in there, but a transponder. You got to have a freaking transponder. And those are not like super cheap.
So you can rent them at most tracks, as you know, but you can rent transponders. Most clubs will rent a transponder. You can do the math, whatever your club's ordering, but you'll be losing money by the end of the first race season if you're renting one every time. So I think in most cases the track would appreciate you to have your own anyway because it's such a hassle otherwise. But every track org I've ever been associated with is going to have transponders available on race day for rent.
There are some in the country that don't because they're trying to run a cheaper program, and so they just don't do it. If you want to race with them, you got to bring your own, which is fine. And I almost appreciate that, having a cheaper race program. So, but yeah, transponder. Either rent one or buy one or whatever you want to do, but add that to your list of things you got to do. And then I guess how do you, your NRC, I think we talked about your NRC experience a little bit already, but your first race weekend, the jitters. How many times do you go over the bike while it's sitting in the shop? How many times do you double check your trailer loadout before you leave? How much sleep do you get the night before? What do you think about morning of? Walk us through it, Cole. What you got for your first official licensed race weekend?
I don't know. You walk us through it. You just did it.
Well, I did it in a very interesting way.
Well, that's true, but I'm an old man, and it's been a little bit for me now.
Oh, that's the memories leaving him. Oh, well, I can say showing up to a race, in the morning when you wake up, it's a little different. I've done a lot of track days, but when there's a competition on the line and whatever your reasoning is, you got to have a reason, I would say, to win. You want to collect some trophies for your kids to see later on in life. You want to be proud of yourself. You want mama to be proud. Whatever it might be. Pick your reason and have that in your back pocket because you're going to need it. But yeah, it's definitely different. On a track day, I know they do tech, and I check all my stuff and I make sure my stuff's good to go and it's going to be okay. I don't trust anyone else to do that. Right. And not saying people don't, not trying to point fingers or blame anyone or anything like that, but I don't actually trust anyone else. And I don't really trust the tech process to be that good. In some places, you do it on your own anyway. So, whatever. But I will say that going into a race weekend or into a race in general, just going into a race, I am personally way more worried about it. Because, whatever I'm racing for, Fred next to me's got his reason. And, Cole's got his reason. And everyone else, they all have their reasons. All of you listening, you have your reasons. And I don't want to mess anyone else's reason up. So I will say that the going over the bike process, huge. And then my reasons come into play when I go through the inventory of the trailer. Repack the trailer and make sure I got everything. I don't really have experience with that for a race weekend yet because the last race weekend I did, I was also traveling across the country. So I went over that trailer about 20 times because if I ain't got it, I ain't got it. So, but yeah, just making sure you have everything you possibly can.
Well, you know me. I mean, I've developed everything has a place and everything's in its place and I have a trailer set up for it. I mean, you tell me where a race is, I can be there.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think will happen naturally, but the quicker you can get to that, the better. My setup's a little different, a little smaller, but it's pretty similar. There are very few tools now that I have to grab from my big toolbox to put in my little toolbox to take with me. But that is the one thing that I do check. I essentially made sure that every tool that I need for basic maintenance is in there, and I've got some other stuff that maybe I'll need, maybe not, but hopefully I've got everything I need.
Duct tape.
Whatever could come through. A lot of duct tape. Yeah, actually, I got to restock my duct tape. I ran out today. Well, almost. I was putting some wheel weights on some wheels, and I was like, this duct tape roll is pretty low. I better get more of that. Time to trash the painter's tape because I'm not taping lights anymore. So, but yeah, and then just the mental, the jitters, the focus. I think you use music to help you out, whether that's to get you pumped or to get you calmed down. And I don't even know. I don't know how to give advice on that because I think everyone's a little different.
It's the mantra. We talk about it all the time. You're going to develop your own mantra.
There you go.
But we're getting off the subject of what you need to do over the winter. You don't need to be worrying about your mantra just yet. The mantra will come.
There you go. Okay. All right. Over the winter. Sorry. Back on subject. We were talking about budget. We were talking about plan. To get back onto budget, but not like just on budget. I don't want to just hit this home on money all day long. But I do want to say that be honest with yourself. And, Cole, you did a full season. That's what you were going to do. I imagine there was actually quite a bit of freaking planning behind the scenes that we don't talk about all the time. And a lot of it's just on your end. But, how am I going to make sure I have all these weekends off for work? How am I going to make sure that I not doing any trips planned around this? Like, this is these weekends racing. This is what I'm doing. Your first season, I don't think you have to do that. If you can, go for it. Do it. Absolutely. Not saying you shouldn't. But I think you can also absolutely be honest with yourself and say, I don't know. I don't know what I can do, but I can do one. Maybe that's where you're at. Maybe you can do one, and you can get through that one, and then you're done with that and move on and say, okay, can we do another one? And figure that out. And that's kind of why I mentioned that putting whatever money you're going to spend on cool parts, put that aside and save it for once you get done with the one and move forward. Or maybe you can say, like, nope, I know for a fact I can do 4 weekends if they're this close to me. Or I can just do 4 weekends, period. Which ones do I want to do? If you want to be competitive, pick a spot where you've ridden before, you can ride well. If you want to be competitive later on, pick a spot you haven't ridden before for every single round and get better that way. Whatever it might be, I think having a plan but being absolutely honest with yourself and hitting it from whatever level. We've talked before, and I've heard it many times, that the average lifespan of a road racer, club racer, is 3 years. You come in and you either get met out, cash out, or just tired of it. I don't know. And you're done. 3 years later, everyone's done. We want this.
I like what you said about picking the weekends. Pick the weekends, put them on the calendar so that they can come up all the time, and you can get it in your head so that those weekends are off limits.
There you go. Yeah, you can't do a barbecue that weekend. Can't go on a cruise. You're freaking racing motorcycles. And I think it's important to me, for all of you listening, that you be honest with yourself and you figure it out, because I don't want you to just be there for 3 years, because I want to keep talking about motorcycles for longer than that. And I want to keep racing for longer than that personally, and I got to have someone to race against. So if we keep having a sport that only lasts 3 years, it's going to continue on a downward trend, and I don't like that. So try and stick with it a little longer. And I think it's, personally, and maybe you disagree with this, Cole, or anyone listening disagrees, but I think it's a lot better to say, nope, I can only do 2 weekends this year. But I know I can do 2, and I'm going to do 2. And go do that. And then come back stronger the next year. Save up your money and make it next year. And it's better to have a slow ease into it than a fast burn out of it, if that makes sense.
I don't know. I mean, I agree with what you said. That's nice, but it is one of those sports that gets you.
Oh, it'll get
you
addicting.
And so you're gonna,
you'll drive yourself crazy.
That's why people go nuts and then burn out, probably, because it is addicting.
But I think that's where the planning comes in. If you can, plan as much as possible. Figure it out.
There's a lot that happens on a race weekend or during a season, and the more of it you can get hashed out ahead of time, the better.
Yep. And then my final point, we talked a few weeks ago about lions and hanging out with lions, and that's important. But I would also say that having not just lions, it ain't got to be the fastest guy out there, but having a teammate or a pit member or a friend, a buddy, a brother, a parent, a spouse. If your kids are down and you got kids, I think having someone in the pits is great. If they've been out to motorcycle events with you before, that's super helpful. That'll do a lot better. But trying to do a full race weekend by yourself, get there, one thing, do the race weekend, cool, and you got to drive home. Doing all that by yourself can get taxing. So if you can find a buddy that can commit to, at least one, or you can find someone to pit with, because we talk about all the time, the paddock's a family. Find someone to pit with, you help them out when they need help, they help you out when you need help, and just kind of spread the love that way. But that's a point I wanted to bring up, that if you can find a team member to be in your pit with you, just to, if nothing else, honestly, just to talk to, help you cool down, help you get ready. They don't need to know a whole lot besides maybe be able to work a rear stand. And if that person loves it, maybe they'll start racing one day, or at least maybe they'll get used to your process and be able to keep helping you out. And
Right.
It's free entertainment, so I don't know why anyone would be against it. So
Reach out. There's plenty of helpful people in the paddock.
yep, like I said, if you don't have anyone to bring with you, absolutely, find someone to pit with. Someone will let you pit with them. I'll let you pit with me if you want, and I'll help you out. I'll grab your rear stand for you. You can do the front though. I'm not doing the front. Just get the rear.
Not doing the front.
Anyway,
Well,
I think
there's some food for thought for people to start thinking. If you have any questions, Easton's always offering his time. If you want to reach out to him.
yeah, absolutely. You can hit me up on Instagram at JKMoto Podcast. I will answer any and all questions, and if I can't answer them, I probably know someone that can. So I will get you the answer that you need, or at least send you the right direction. If you're looking at racing next year and you're still on the fence, hopefully this kind of helps at least give you some, like Cole said, food for thought, or helps you make the decision. The answer is yes. But at the same time, be honest with yourself. If it's not there yet, that's cool. Stick with it. We'll get there eventually. I hope to see you guys out there on the grid.
Absolutely.
That's all I got. You got anything else, Cole?
No, think that's good.
All right. Well, we want to thank you all for listening. Go race, win, get a sponsorship, and become a MotoGP star. That's the message of this week's episode.
I love it. All right. We'll see y'all next time.
Take it easy.